leadership race for Britain's Prime Minister heats up after Boris Johnson drops out of the contest. With this, Britain's former Finance Minister Rishi Sunak is now the front-runner in UK Prime Minister's race to replace Liz Truss as Prime Minister. Truss has resigned as Prime Minister. She quit in barely 45 days, becoming the shortest-serving Prime Minister of United Kingdom. And this came following a failed tax-cutting budget that rocked financial markets, and she wasn't able to revive the economy of the United Kingdom as promised. The former Prime Minister Boris Johnson, though, has now pulled out of the contest, saying that he had the support of enough lawmakers to progress to the next stage, but far fewer than front-runner former Finance Minister Rishi Sunak. Now, with this, the Tory party leadership contest is set between Rishi Sunak and Penny Mordaunt. In fact, highly favoured to win, Rishi Sunak he has the public backing of at least 147 MPs so far, while ex-cabinet minister Penny Mordaunt, who was the first to announce himself as an official candidate, has only 24 MPs supporting her. Rishi Sunak will likely become UK's Prime Minister unless Penny reaches the threshold of 100 lawmakers. Let me quickly cut across to Jonathan Gilbert, joining us live from London. Jonathan, a quick word from you. Bright chances for Rishi Sunak as we see the other contenders not having enough support. And at this point, we see that Liz Truss had to back off after failed attempts on tax cuts and reviving the economy. Could we safely say that Rishi Sunak is likely to be the next Prime Minister of the United Kingdom?
Well, I hate to contradict you, but I'd say that's absolutely not a safe bet at the moment. And the reason is down to the extraordinarily complex and somewhat dysfunctional voting process that the Conservative Party engages in. We've seen this already with Liz Truss, just as you say, 44, 45 days in office, less than 2 months ago. But we're about to see this again. This is what's going to happen in the next less than 10 hours or so. We know that Rishi Sunak already has more than enough MPs to push him over the threshold of this ballot. But Penny Mordaunt, who was until late last night very much the outside candidate, now faces a situation this morning where, if Boris Johnson is to be believed, there are 100 or so loose MPs now who would have backed Boris Johnson, who now have to decide who they wish to back. And they won't all automatically gravitate to Rishi Sunak. Although he is essentially the establishment candidate, he's also alienated a lot of MPs, principally because of his perceived role as the backstabber of Boris Johnson when Johnson was forced from office. So what we're going to find out over the next few hours, probably in less than 6 or 7 hours now, is whether Mordaunt gets enough MPs behind her to take her, as you say, over the threshold and into a party membership ballot. And if it goes to the party members, then that's a whole new ballgame. Because you may remember when it was Liz Truss versus Rishi Sunak, Sunak came a very poor second. And one has to ask oneself, you have to pose the question, could that possibly happen again? So Sunak definitely the front runner, but by no means over the line yet.
All right. From what we see, Liz Truss lost out confidence from her support. Her supporters withdrew support because she wasn't able to deliver. She saw that coming. In 45 days, she withdrew, resigned, becoming the shortest-serving Prime Minister of the United Kingdom. Now, do you think these challenges will mount on whoever will be elected to take up the mantle?
It's a very interesting question. What happened was that Rishi Sunak essentially turned out to have been right all along when it came to the economy. He warned against spooking the markets. Truss and her Chancellor Kwasi Kwarteng were essentially zealots with very little economic experience, and they absolutely crashed the economy and devalued the pound. So Sunak comes back better than ever. And like I say, if it was down to MPs alone, he would be a done deal. But the unfortunate thing is that because of our, as I say, dysfunctional electoral process, this has to then go to Conservative Party members who, as I've explained in the past, are very very male, very southern, and definitely skew much more old and white than the general population. And they took against Rishi Sunak for whatever reason last time round, and there's no guarantee that they won't do so again.
All right. How is the electorate receiving this news? First of all, Liz Truss resigning, and now again she's got to hold on or hold fort until the next successor. The people, the public, the citizens of United Kingdom, are they receiving this well? Or are they lost without a leader for a while now? It seems like the government itself is in doldrums.
Yeah, it's not so much a question of feeling lost, but I think the electorate, to which we're referring to, the 70 million people who live in this country, certainly the tens of millions who are eligible to vote, are just incredibly frustrated by this whole process. And all the polls show that were there a general election tomorrow, the Conservative Party would be absolutely wiped out in favour of the opposition, the Labour Party, anything between 100 to 250 seat majority, I was reading yesterday, if there were an election tomorrow. So I think there's a mood of sort of exasperation and frustration amongst the general electorate, which is, again, one of the reasons why the Conservative Party want to have a new leader installed as soon as conceivably possible, just to try and bring a little element of stability, not only to the voting public, but also to the international markets.
You know, I'd like to ask you the reason to why Boris Johnson backed out. We believe that he did arrive, he did hope to gather support from the MPs, but then last minute decided to pull out. What really happened there?
I don't think that question has yet been answered, and I think there are probably a lot of political writers, bashing the phones this morning to try and find out the truth behind that. We know what Boris is like. He's a very flamboyant character, but let's just say he does have a little bit of a loose relationship with the truth on occasions. He claimed last night that he had at least 102 MPs backing him, which would have put him on the ballot and would almost certainly have made him Prime Minister next Friday because of his overwhelming popularity amongst, as I say, this very narrow cohort of Conservative Party leaders. Now, it may be, number one, he didn't actually have that number of MPs and he was just flying a kite. It may be, number two, he did have that number of MPs, but enough MPs told him that because the party was so incredibly divided as a result of his last disastrous premiership that regardless of being elected Prime Minister or not, he would essentially crash the party, and this would lead inevitably to a catastrophic general election and a general election loss. So I suspect it's somewhere, the truth lies somewhere between those two. He may or may not have had the support he claimed, but he certainly knows that he's an incredibly divisive character and he cannot carry his own party at the moment.
All right, Jonathan, stay with us. I'm going to cut across to Lavina Tandon, India Today correspondent, joining us live from London. Lavina, a quick word. Rishi Sunak has bright chances to become the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, and if he does, the first time ever in England's history, an Indian origin person will be taking on the mantle. Do you see his chances likely?
Very likely and very bright indeed. Of course, everything depends on whether Penny Mordaunt pulls the number 100, the magic number 100 as far as MPs are concerned. As of now, the momentum is behind Rishi Sunak, and a lot of MPs from the Boris Johnson camp have joined the Rishi camp indeed, and he's already crossed the 200 number. So if he continues with that momentum, it's quite possible that this will be a Diwali bonanza for a lot of the diaspora. I already hear the kind of excitement, at the same time everybody keeping their fingers crossed, because if Penny Mordaunt does cross the 100 or touches the 100 number and enters into the contest, and if this whole thing goes out to the online contest amongst the Tory party members, then it is very likely that he's going to lose, because we have had instances here and on various other gamuts as well, where the Tory party members, certain sections do not want Rishi to come and they don't see him very representative of the white population, quote unquote, as we see. One of the reasons, apart from many, that he doesn't relate too well because of his wealth or the fact that he gave the dagger to Boris. But at the same time, as I told you, it's a moment where he is seen as an economist who is the only person who possibly could control the economy too in the minds of the people, though he will also have a tough time. So having said all of that, I think Rishi has a very bright chance of winning this and winning this and it being a very historic moment, and that too on Diwali.
Absolutely. Well, let's see how far Rishi Sunak goes. He has the backing of nearly 147 MPs, but there are a few other hurdles. If he does manage to surpass them, then he could possibly be the first Indian origin Prime Minister United Kingdom has ever had. Thank you very much, Gilbert and Lavina, for joining us on that.